Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got a lovely lady. Her name is Cassie Christopher. She's a registered dietitian. So welcome, Cassie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to get into our conversation today.
Me too. You know, this is so exciting for me because this is something that we're going to be discussing today that's very close to my heart too. And we've not actually had a conversation with anybody on the show specifically around this topic. And the topic we're going to be talking about today, listeners, is body image. You know, is body image a problem in your relationships? So, Cassie, what's led you, first of all, to be doing what you're doing today? And why are you so passionate about this?
Yeah. So, for me, I'm a registered dietitian. I have my master's in nutrition, the food expert. And what I noticed for myself when I was in school, learning all the things that you have to know to help people heal with food, I couldn't get past my bar of chocolate, sometimes more a day, emotional eating habit. And really, I came to notice that I was using food as a way to numb how I was feeling. Grad school was a very stressful time for me. And also as a way to get pleasure in my life, because I wasn't doing a lot of self-care or devoting myself to things I enjoyed. I was kind of head down and believed that that's what I had to do in order to be a good adult and survive in this world. And so eventually that led to, gaining weight, feeling uncomfortable in my body. I developed some autoimmune issues. And, this went on for several years. Even as a new registered dietitian, I was helping other people with their food issues, and I was still struggling myself. And I always love to share that because I want people to know that you can feel like you know everything about what to eat and how to eat and why to eat this over that, and still struggle. I mean, I definitely did. And I think that the reason that we are in that boat is because a lot of what we do with food really has nothing to do with food. That emotional eating has to do with numbing your feelings, with trying to feel good. And actually, it can be even a trauma response for people who have had trauma earlier in their life. And I came to you, Lyn, because what I'm noticing is women are coming to me, and the reason that they want to heal their emotional eating is because they want to start dating, but they believe that they will not be attractive to potential romantic partners unless they change how they look, usually wanting to lose weight. But, certainly there can be other ways to change how you look. And emotional eating is the thing that is causing the struggle with weight. And what I've noticed, Lyn, and I'm so, happy to walk you through this and why this might be and how to get this result, is in the process of healing emotional eating, you really have to accept how you're feeling, accept that you're having feelings, and then feel those feelings. Again, like it has nothing to do with a meal plan or what you're eating. And in that process, I'm watching women, because I work with women 45 and up, have to start to accept themselves and their bodies and do a lot of unlearning of what they've been told about themselves and their bodies. And the end result is, yes, a healthier relationship with food, but healthier relationship with their bodies and feeling good in their bodies, even if their bodies maybe didn't change. And it's so fun then to see my clients, because I love to run group programs, talking about the wonderful men that they're meeting, by and large, or the increased connection that they're having with their romantic partners. already, again, they come to me wanting to be more attractive, but they, through the process of healing emotional eating, they find that they already are attractive, or they can start to appreciate and accept things about themselves that they had trouble accepting before.
Wow. That's so true. I can relate to this so much, because I'm exactly that person, that you described as somebody that was medicating myself with food on the back of, trauma that I went through as a teenager. And literally I've yo-yoed myself up and down the scales all my adult life on the back of that. But like you say, it's not actually anything to do with the food itself. We all know, don't we, that we should think we do by now anyway, that what's healthy for us to eat and what's not, that isn't the issue. But the issue is usually what's the cause, what's the underlying root problem that needs to be resolved, that's caused the emotional eating in the first place, that usually doesn't get addressed by the weight loss industry.
Oh, 100%. And actually, it's my belief that, you mentioned childhood trauma. It's my belief that the weight loss industry actually perpetuates that trauma. I have clients who, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a mental health expert, I'm a registered dietitian. But just from what I've seen, it seems like they almost have PTSD from the scale. They can't get on the scale, whether or not it goes up or down, without these really awful self-critical, kind of self-sabotaging thoughts going through their mind. And so, yeah, that diet industry certainly is part of the unlearning that needs to happen in order to get to a place where you can care for yourself well, because that self-criticism that happens as a result of stepping on the scale certainly is not in my definition of, loving yourself or caring for yourself well. And I don't say that with shame. I think we come by these things really naturally. We fall into these patterns because we've been told this is what you have to do. And so certain, and that self-criticism that comes from, again, those trauma beliefs. And so what I want to share with you is this model called the window of tolerance, which was developed by Dan Siegel for helping people understand how their responses are related to the trauma that they went through in the past. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is we could be talking about big T trauma or little t trauma, whether that be one event that happened that was awful, or in many cases, especially around bodies, is people maybe grew up in households where their bodies were constantly criticized. They were told, I have clients who they were told, men will never love you if you're fat. Like they were told that repeatedly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if you got these messages from the people who, are responsible for loving you best, oftentimes the adults in your life growing up, but certainly we're getting those messages from culture, it's going to take some unlearning. And this window of tolerance model basically states, and I found this to be true, that we all have this kind of happy place where we can take the things life throws at us without unhelpful coping mechanisms. So something bad happens and we're able to deal with it and move on. It doesn't lead to emotional eating. It doesn't lead to binging. It doesn't lead to, shutting down. Like, I'll have clients come to me and say that they are in line for fast food, or they're standing in front of their pantry and they don't know how they got there. Like, they're just like, how did I get here? And that is dissociating. You're checking out from your present reality. So if those things happen, what you need to do in order to care for yourself well and not rely on food to care for yourself, your emotional self, is to get back into that window of tolerance where you can, take life's punches. And there's two ways to do that I want to talk about. And I think this is going to help your audience when they start to notice, because around body image, if you're looking in the mirror and you're starting to notice all these really mean thoughts coming up, Okay, you're outside your window of tolerance. If you're looking in the mirror and you start to think about restricting, okay, I need to get control of this. I need to start a diet tomorrow. I'm cutting out all carbs. I'm never going to eat, XYZ again. That restriction is actually a sign of being outside your window of tolerance. Because think about it, when you're at your best, and hopefully we've all been here, we're able to see things we're not happy about and problem solve in a way that is like healthful and good for us. We're not problem solving in a way that is punishing or like mean to ourselves, essentially, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for this piece, how then do you get, if you notice these mean thoughts about yourself, or you're thinking no one's ever going to love me unless I XYZ, how do you get back into that window of tolerance so that you can then make healthful choices? Well, there's two things. The first is calming down your nervous system, because what's really happening is your nervous system is activated. You get the stress hormone cortisol, you're pushed into fight, flight, or freeze. And when you're outside your window of tolerance, that nervous system is always activated. So what you can do to get back into the window of tolerance is to work on being present to your body, being present to how you feel, and really grounding yourself to the present time to just calm everything down. And that's so helpful for those racing thoughts that are always catastrophizing about the future too. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but a few quick breaths, can make you feel so much better and help you get to a better place. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one thing to know it, though, and another thing to, put it into practice and then keep putting it into practice so it becomes an automatic habit for yourself.
That's such a great point. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Lyn, because a lot of women, when we first start working together, will say, they'll come to me and be like, okay, you taught me all these tools and I didn't use any of them. And they feel so much shame. They know the things to do, but they're not doing them. And what is happening is when you're outside your window of tolerance, too far outside your window of tolerance, you can't use those tools. Like your brain is in fight or flight or freeze. It's not in a space to be able to use those tools. But if you're just, it's kind of think of it this way, if you're just a little bit outside your window of tolerance, then maybe you can use those tools. So the trick is when you have an experience where, you know that you've done something that you wish you hadn't, you look in the mirror, you're berating yourself for how you look and starting to think about restricting, or you're emotionally eating, you're binging, whatever it may be, you kind of lose control of your emotions. The trick is to be able to curiously, non-judgmentally look at that situation, see what happened to get you to that point, and then try to think about what are the unique cues for you where you can intervene much sooner. Because if you're in the middle of a binge, for instance, that's too late. My clients who've been practicing this for a long time, if they find themselves in a binge, they actually can start to do some of these being present and grounding and end the binge and get back to the window of tolerance. But when you're just starting out, that's too late. So for me, for instance, I've done this work, obviously, and my story, like I shared, involves struggling with emotional eating. And now I help other people because I figured out how to heal it. And it was nothing I learned in grad school. And so for me, my triggers, I will notice if I get a strong urge to have something sweet or chocolatey, or, like I just want to go to the bakery and get a cinnamon roll right now, whatever it might be. I check in like, oh, that's interesting. That strong drive for something sweet is now uncommon for me. And that is my cue. Okay, I think it might be time to check in with how I'm feeling. It might be time to do some of these grounding exercises to get into my body so that it doesn't lead to needing to use food to numb. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what typically, when you refer to grounding exercises, for the benefit of the audience, are examples of those?
Yeah, that's such a great question. The one that I love that is just the easiest thing that anyone can do is some breathing exercises. So I recommend a breathing exercise where you breathe in for a count of 4. you hold for a count of 5 and you breathe out for a count of 6. So you essentially are making your exhale much longer than your inhale. It's called round breathing. And you can practice that anywhere, when you're walking down the street or you're, in transportation or whatever, wherever you may be. And actually, research shows there's a lot of benefit to breathing practices. Not only does it calm down your nervous system, not only do I see it help my clients who are struggling with emotional eating, but actually it can reduce the frequency of hot flashes.
Wow.
And I work with peri and postmenopausal women. And so these menopausal hormones are also something that can ramp up the nervous system, and doing things like breathing practices can help.
So you don't necessarily have to use it as an intervention. You can start practicing and it becoming a habit, and maybe never need to use it as an intervention.
That's exactly right. Because part of this window of tolerance model, where you have your happy place where you can handle whatever life throws at you, is with these things like grounding techniques and what I'm about to share in a moment, because I said there were 2 things, you can actually enlarge your window of tolerance. So you can increase the amount of stuff that life can throw at you without you having to use unhelpful coping mechanisms. Another word for that would be you can increase your resilience. And I mentioned trauma before, and the way that trauma comes into this is people, and research shows that when people have a history of trauma, their brains are more sensitive, more vigilant. Brain scans show these brains that are always on the lookout, looking for trouble and threats. And that's going to mean that you have a greater or kind of faster stress response. So it's going to be easier for someone who has a history of trauma to get out of their window of tolerance. And for those people, it may be harder to get back in the window of tolerance. So that's why it's really important to do things like the grounding exercises to increase your resilience, kind of increase how big your window of tolerance is and how much life can throw at you.
There's always a lot of power in the now, isn't there? And I find that, I use breathing as a technique to ground myself, but I tend to also do that with the thoughts of, I'm breathing in things like love, abundance, and all the positivity. But then when I'm breathing out, I'm thinking I'm breathing out, any fear, doubt, worry, and all of that. So I also do the exercise along with those thoughts as well.
I love that. And that gets to the second thing that you can do to get back in the window of tolerance, which is really, and again, this tip in particular is something that you can't do when you're in the middle of, an emotional eating episode or feeling bad about yourself. This has to be done when you're feeling healthier. But that is to change your trauma-related beliefs about yourself or about the world. And one in particular, and this goes back to our theme, is this belief that you are unworthy of love if you live in a larger body, or if you don't meet the beauty ideals, which the beauty ideals in current culture is, skinny, young, white, toned, right? And so if you don't have those Western European perfect symmetrical features and all of this, then you're outside of that beauty ideal. And you might believe, especially if you've heard this from past partners or family members growing up, like people that you trusted to speak love to you, you might believe then that you're unworthy of love if you fall outside of that range. And that belief is going to keep you moving in, or moving out rather, of your window of tolerance when you, for instance, look in the mirror. But if you can work to change that belief, that you are worthy of love exactly as you are, not only will you stop flipping outside of that window of tolerance when you look in the mirror, but in my experience with my clients, you're going to be more open to connection with romantic partners.
Absolutely. The thing is that we often think, that men wouldn't appreciate us regardless of what size we are. But, you know, to my relief, I've found, you know, it doesn't matter what age you are, what size you are, men appreciate you for you first and foremost. And you know, it's what you're exuding from the inside, not what you look like from the outside.
Yeah. And, you know, and this isn't my personal experience. This is more watching my clients who are, again, women 45 and up. And we have these weekly group meetings where women are sharing, you know, this one woman shared once that she was told growing up, men won't love you if you're fat, you know, love her if she's fat. And so, you know, she really believed that. And the thing is until you examine these beliefs and where they come from, then they have free range in your mind to run around and, you know, color the way that you see the world. But once you can look and really examine what are your beliefs, what were you told about your body, then you are able to decide how you would like to believe, and do some work. I mean, changing beliefs is hard. It really is. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of breathing in the good stuff and breathing out the bad stuff. And honestly, I feel like, and I'm so science-based, but you're going to hear me say this, I feel like there's a little magic involved, because women feel in my work, it seems to me that women will feel helpless. Like it's always going to be this way. Okay, now I know where these beliefs come from. I've examined it, but I don't know how to change it. Right. And just by sitting with the feeling, and again, this is a lot of what we're doing with emotional eating, just sitting with the hard stuff and feeling rather than using food to numb. Slowly the way that they think starts to change and that unlearning happens. But to unlearn, you have to clearly see what you learned in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't know what we don't know until we do.
Exactly. You know, another trauma-related belief that I see leading to emotional eating in particular, and, you know, then resulting in some of the struggle with body image is that emotions are unacceptable or emotions are unsafe. You know, for people who grew up in homes where they didn't want you to feel your emotions, or they were a bother, you know, rather than something that you can learn from or helpful. Or, you know, I grew up in a religious environment that was very much made me suspicious is the right word, suspicious of my feelings. Like they're probably going to lead me down the wrong way. I need, you know, logic and these kinds of things. And so in order to feel your emotions, you have to do some work around that as well, to start to accept how you're feeling, to start to feel safe in your feelings. And again, a lot of that also has to go back to calming down your nervous system, because if your nervous system is riding high, you're not going to feel safe, because your body's telling you you are running from a saber-toothed tiger, you know, on the plains. You're in fight or flight, and that's not a safe place to start to feel your emotions.
No, so true. And I think with negative beliefs, it's recognizing first of all that, you know, you have that as a belief that's not actually serving you, and also, you know, it's important, I think, to question, because I tend to teach people that, you know, if you have a belief that isn't serving you, then think of that belief as being as a tabletop, you know, so that, say the belief is, you know, men aren't going to find fat women attractive, and I'm a big woman. Then look at what supports that belief, you know, what legs underneath that tabletop of belief are supporting that belief. And you'll find that's, like you say, from your past and probably what people have told you. But if you keep questioning each one of those legs underneath that tabletop that's supporting that belief, you can get rid of all those legs, and then eventually that belief will fall over and it won't exist anymore.
Yeah. Or, you know, to experiment too with, I mean, especially something like this, just to experiment and see. If you make a dating app profile and you have realistic pictures of yourself, do people still reach out to you? And, from, again, the experience of my clients, I think you'll find, yeah, there's still really quality people who will reach out to you, and you can have a fun time getting to know. And even just the confidence in your own body. I talk to a lot of women who are in relationships and they feel uncomfortable in their skin to the point where it's impacting, sex and feeling sexy in their intimate relationships. And understanding, I think what we haven't talked about that would be helpful to talk about again is understanding, where does this beauty ideal come from? Like what would you need to be in order to feel confident in your skin? Well, if the answer is someone else entirely, or someone that you will never be able to be, that bears looking into, because our beauty standards come from, really the patriarchy and, these places, unfair systems of like socioeconomic class. And like, when you really get into it, colonization, like there's a lot of buzzwords that I'm saying here, but you can go out and do some research about where did these body ideals come from. And you'll quickly see they don't come from a good place. They don't come from a place that is valuing women or valuing humankind. They come from a place of objectifying people to uphold the current power dynamics. Honestly, if you feel like I'm getting really crazy here, look into it. There's great research around this.
Yeah. And, it's a shame that even women's magazines are guilty of this, aren't they? The women's magazines that are supposedly, representing women are guilty of, falling into the trap, I suppose, of idealizing what beauty is in terms of society.
Certainly. And so, if you're looking for more confidence, I would recommend doing some of these things we've already talked about, where you start off really examining where your beliefs about your body have come from and what beliefs you'd like to have. I love that tabletop, activity visualization that you shared, Lyn. And something else that I would recommend you do is get out your journal or get out a piece of paper and start a list of things that make you feel confident. And I'll tell you, I've done these kinds of activities before. And when I start my list the first time, I usually have next to nothing on it, or I have the things that other people have told me make me feel confident, which might be losing 50 pounds or, whatever it might be. And, I want to say that if you're someone who you lost weight in the past and you did feel confident at that weight, I think that is actually a common experience, and I don't want to take away from that. But generally, you felt confident at that weight because we live in a society that really celebrates weight loss. People will comment, they will compliment. You may have felt better because you were eating in a way that helped you feel better and moving your body more. You might have been doing more things for yourself. So I don't want to take away from that. But it also doesn't mean that you can't feel confident where you are, and that the only way to feel confident is to get back to that weight. Oftentimes women will tell me, wow, I remember I was looking at this picture of me, X number of years ago and X number of pounds ago. And if I only weighed now what I weighed then, but even then I thought that I still needed to lose weight, right? Like, it's never enough. The problem isn't the weight or the number on the scale. The problem is these beliefs about yourself and a lack of acceptance of yourself that then is leading to not accepting your feelings, so that you have to use food to numb how you're feeling, and not accepting yourself so that you don't feel confident to be intimate with other people.
Yeah, and that's such a shame, that it stops people in their tracks, from really having, totally fulfilling, alive, happier relationships than what they've currently got, but just because of their own thoughts that are going on in their head that probably their partners are totally unaware of, you know, that are stopping them feeling confident and free, which, you know, makes me feel sad, really.
Yeah. And, you know, back to that list, I was saying, if you create a list of things that make you feel confident, when you start, the things on the list, again, maybe things that are more related to your unhelpful beliefs than things that actually make you feel confident. But if you keep at the list, come back to it, you're going to start to notice, like, oh, when my hair is like this, you know, I have a little bounce in my step. I feel really confident. And that's true for me. I feel confident when my hair looks really good. Like, I love that, you know, fresh blowout look where I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, look at this hair. It makes me feel amazing. I feel so confident. And so that would be on my list. You know, something else that makes me feel confident would be being comfortable in my clothes and not feeling like my clothes are like super tight and constraining. And I'm always thinking about how big my belly is because the thing on my belly is so tight, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can start to notice what makes you feel confident. There are certain songs that I hear that make me feel confident, and create your own list, and then allow yourself, you know, give yourself permission to feel confident, and embrace the things that make you feel confident and do those things. And you might start to find that you're able to lean into those beliefs that you know, want to have, like that you're worthy of love just as you are, or your emotions are safe and you can feel them rather than eat them, that you can start to lean into some of those beliefs from that place where you feel good and you feel confident, you feel cared for.
And sometimes, you know, some women will say to me that, you know, it's hard for me to change my beliefs to something like, you know, I am worthy of love, when they've not actually felt that before, or feel like they're lying to themselves if they say that. But, you know, again, it just takes a bit of practice, doesn't it? You know, it doesn't mean that you're never going to actually feel worthy of love, but actually know that you are worthy of love. And if you find it a bit of a challenge to start with because you're not used to it, then again, you can do the opposite exercise around, you know, add the legs to that table of that belief of that you are worthy of love, to give it support, you know, so to enable it to become a stronger belief. And over time, it'll become a conviction, and you'll naturally start to exude that you are worthy of love.
Yeah. One of the tools I use for this with my clients is self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff has done a lot of research into the 3 elements of self-compassion, and how, I mean, she's done research across like happiness and mental health and, you know, eating disorders. Like, really, it spans, the benefits span a very wide range, but essentially self-compassion, the 3 elements are self-kindness, common humanity, which means recognizing you aren't alone in your suffering, and mindfulness, which I think another way to say that is accepting that you are struggling without, you know, kind of going so far into the struggle that you become a victim or lose sight. And so if you're someone who's feeling like, I want to believe I'm worthy of love, but I don't know how, or I don't have, you know, proof of that, I think this is where self-compassion becomes so strong and impactful, because, you know, common humanity, we can recognize, hey, if you're listening right now and you're feeling like that, we're talking about it. This is not, you're not isolated. You're not alone. This is a common issue. And when I say that, what a lot of women will do then is, well, it's common. And so they use it to invalidate how they're feeling. Like, so I should just get over it. It's common. No, it's common. And it really stinks. And it's really something that people actually struggle with. And then the mindfulness piece, accepting like, hey, this is hard right now. Like, this is hard. I don't want to be here. I want to believe that I'm worthy of love. I'm not feeling like it. And yet, you know, I have the hope that someday I will. And then the self-kindness, where you can just bathe yourself in the kindness that you probably are giving to everyone else in your life. And from that, again, that self-compassion is going to help you stay in your window of tolerance, be more resilient, and change even some of these beliefs that you have, and help you feel grounded in your body, because your body is a safe place when your body is a kind place.
Oh, I love that. And you can use probably a stepping stone belief between beliefs, so if you've previously have been aware that, you haven't had a very positive belief around being worthy of love, but you're finding it's a bit of a struggle to actually go from that to, oh, I really am worthy of love, then you can just, say something that's a bit of a mix in between of that, which could be, I'm working on being someone that feels worthy of love, as your sort of stepping stone towards then actually believing that ultimately.
I love that. And, going back to body image, oftentimes there is a big gap between hating your cellulite and then all of a sudden feeling like, oh, well, do I need to magically celebrate, my cellulite? And the image I have in my head is tear all my clothes off and dance around in my garden, in celebration of my cellulite.
Well, yeah. That'd be nice.
And if you want to do that, awesome, right? But most of us probably, if we can get to a point where we look at the cellulite and just go, meh, it's there. That's okay. It's not my favorite. And yet, like, my legs are strong and they allow me to move. Like, that you can respect your body and respect yourself, maybe as a stepping stone, or even feel neutral about your body, neutral about yourself as a stepping stone belief, which I love that term, to, before you get to a place where, and you may never get to a place where you're dancing naked in your garden, under a full moon. And that's okay. That's definitely on my bucket list, but it doesn't have to be on everyone's.
I love it. Okay. So when you think about, this particular subject of body image, and it being a problem in, many people's relationships, Cassie, and any final words of wisdom before we wrap up the episode?
Yeah. I really think that from what I've witnessed, and again, I'm not the relationship expert, I just am sharing this interesting phenomenon where as women come to me and we're working on healing emotional eating, they get to a place where they're accepting and loving of themselves, and then romantic relationships feel possible. And, I have clients who've experienced this. They've felt confident enough to go out and date. And actually, one of my clients was on a trip to New York City with, a wonderful man that she met recently. And it was so fun to see the pictures, where she was having a great time and smiling so big, right? And that was possible because she decided to create new beliefs for herself and to accept herself and love herself. And that was really the path forward to meeting someone wonderful, in my, opinion, rather than a posture or attitude of self-hatred and self-disgust. Like, I just kind of think that law of attraction or manifesting, right? Like, and I'm not big into that. I'm a dietitian. That's not my specialty, but it feels like there's something there. And I wanted to make sure that your audience knew about it.
Absolutely. So where can our audience contact you, Cassie? What's your best contact information?
Yeah, if anyone's hearing this and going, wow, I'm really relating to struggling with eating, I'm really relating to struggling with my body image as well, and I want some help, you can go to CassieChristopher.net/free and get my free guide. It's You're Done Dieting But Still Want to Heal Emotional Eating, a roadmap to achieve peace and freedom with food and feel comfortable in your own skin. I'm the queen of subtitles. And you can go grab that roadmap, and I lay out for you exactly what it's going to take to get from where you are to feeling comfortable in your own skin, comfortable around food, and give you the first couple steps that you need to get started.
Excellent. Love that. And thank you for offering that to our audience today. That's brilliant. So, Cassie, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for being a great guest. I've loved this topic and loved chatting to you.
It's been so fun. Thank you.
So just to wrap up then, listeners, true love starts with opening our hearts. So until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.